Our episode kicks off showing where the troops of Lord Demon were strolling around, spreading chaos. They strutted out of the demon territory, wrecking everything in sight until they reached the North Fortress. At that moment, a soldier begs for permission to speak because the defense lines were falling like dominoes in front of Lord Demon's army. They had no clue how long the North Fortress would hold out. The king asks what the great hero was up to, and the soldier responds that he was holed up in the South Fortress. The king orders to summon him immediately, also commanding you on the other side of the screen to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss updates. One of the men suggests to His Majesty that they should prep the purification spell with all the mages in the country. The king insists that using it without relying on the great hero would mean curtains for the North Fortress and everyone. However, they beg for His Majesty's permission. Meanwhile, Lord Demon is just casually observing the destruction until one of his servants, Green Isle, arrives and Lord Demon inquires about the situation. She informs Lord Demon that the moment is nearing. Then Lord Demon decides to withdraw Uliminas. Uliminas is baffled because they were supposed to ramp up the attack. Lord Demon explains they're going to cast a purification spell and warns not to let the soldiers get caught in it. Meanwhile, humans are gathering their strength to cast the purification spell to cleanse the lands and shield themselves against the demons. The king casts the spell to spread through the forest. Meanwhile, Banaza arrives home, swinging the door open, only to face Fenris eagerly waiting for him, ready to welcome him. She dashes towards Banaza, enveloping him in a hug. He asks if she was waiting, to which she replies she thought he'd be back soon and offers him a meal or a bath. Banaza opts for a meal, and Fenris hurries off to prepare it. Banaza watches, slightly bewildered, as he sits at the table and sips his tea. Fenris asks Banaza how his trip to the city was. Banaza hadn't found a place to do business yet, but there were plenty of shops in Hotto. He was checking out some stuff to get an idea of equipment prices. Blossom mentions she was also thinking of selling the vegetables they were growing, feeling she couldn't just hang around without offering anything in return. Bilary was thinking of raising some horses. Renting them out for carriage rides could bring in good income. Blossom explains to Banaza that Bilary worked at a horse stable, so she was used to dealing with them. Banaza finds it a good idea, suggesting they could use the backyard of the house for that. Bilary says she'd work to contribute to the household finances. Meanwhile, Bolano laments not knowing how to do anything, and Ballyrosa does too, feeling even worse as they had no income. However, Fenris doesn't see a problem in taking care of them. After all, it was her role as the alpha's wife. Ballyrosa finds it odd for her to mention the pack. Banaza thinks if everyone pitched in with household chores, the two wouldn't need to worry and could continue training with sword and magic. Ballyrosa and Bolano thank for the generosity. Meanwhile, humans believe the purification spell made Lord Demon's army retreat. The spell's effect would last about 3 months, during which demons couldn't approach the purified areas, granting them temporary protection. The king's daughter worries. If nothing was done by then, they'd be in trouble since the mages were bedridden after exhausting all their mana. They claimed it'd take at least 2 to 3 months to recover, even her father, as he was one of the mages of the country. According to the laws of the kingdom of Clyrode, the princess should assume the functions there until the king recovered. First and foremost, the princess wanted to dismiss the great hero from his position, shocking everyone with that decision. After all, he was absent while the kingdom was in peril and remained secluded in a fortress. She thought it was an obvious decision. Then one of the servants asks her what they'd do to deal with Lord Demon's army, and if she planned to summon a candidate for the great hero. The princess says no, they didn't have enough mages to perform the summoning. The king's daughter recognizes they were at a standstill, suggesting they call the prophetess, and then a guard went to inform the great hero that he had been dismissed. He couldn't believe it, and the soldier says it was orders from the first princess. The great hero finds that affront unacceptable. The soldier just drops his stuff on the ground, and the great hero declares he wouldn't forgive them, and when Lord Demon attacked, the kingdom would beg for his help, and that's all they'd do, calling them insects. Then it was already night. Banaza and Fenris were already in bed, and Banaza asks if Fenris had already slept. Fenris retorts that she's wide awake, to which Banaza remarks that she's been all fired up ever since they moved to this place. She replies that if it's for her hubby, she'd do anything. Banaza starts saying there was a time he wanted to express how grateful he was to her because it must have been tough to adapt to human habits. But she also took care of the entire household, and he's very thankful for that. But before he finishes, Fenris dozes off. He muses on how, when he was whisked away to this world all alone, he was was so unsure how things would pan out, but he managed to find work and even a house in no time. He somehow made his way here. If he were alone, he probably wouldn't feel as relaxed as he does now. And finally, dawn breaks, and then the girls tell Banaza and Fenris to have a date. Fenris gets excited because it's a couple's outing where they stroll around and flirt. Bilary remarks that the weather is lovely that day, and Blossom says they'll handle the house chores so they can enjoy the day together. Balirosa insists they go and have a blast, even though Banaza doesn't think they should. Bolano tells him not to be shy because Fenris is his wife. Fenris thanks them all and urges Banaza to come with her right away. So they head to the town, have some juice, dance a bit, and check out a hat shop. After a meal, Fenris says she's stuffed, and they picked a good restaurant. She asks Banaza what they should do now. Balirosa and her friends were very considerate to them, and Fenris wants to make the most of the alone time she has with Banaza. So they start walking, and Fenris says she sees many unusual things. Banaza asks if she wants anything since she helps him so much. He feels he should give her whatever present she wants. Fenris is ecstatic. It'd be the first time she'd receive a gift, so Banaza spots a brooch that he thinks suits Fenris and buys it for her. Night falls, and the two return home, leaving the girls whispering, wondering what happened on their day out because they knew nothing. After all, Fenris had been staring at the brooch Banaza gave her since they got it. Blossom is glad they enjoyed their outing, but she and the girls envy not having a relationship. As night falls, Fenris hugs Banaza, who feels quite embarrassed and couldn't sleep because Fenris wouldn't let him be and wanted to stay close to him. Meanwhile, as dawn breaks, the great hero is furious because the princess took advantage of the king's absence to kick him out. He's rummaging through the treasure room looking for some secret treasure to defeat Lord Demon. He wanted to use this secret treasure to be praised as a hero for the rest of his life. He didn't understand because he was the great hero chosen by the king, but that man mastered spells he didn't know, referring to Banaza, remembering his skills. He craved power, and then he heard a voice saying that if he desired power, he should set it free. If he pulled out the sword from its base, it would grant his wish. His servant couldn't hear the voice speaking to the great hero, and the entity told him to pull the sword. He needed to do it and asked if he was chickening out, and he tells it to shut up, saying whoever it was, that entity would work for him. And upon freeing the creature, she introduces herself as Haya. She was a jinn controlling light and darkness from the origin, and then she asks if he was the one who broke the seal that trapped her. The great hero was scared, but he admits that yes, he was the one who broke the seal, and then Haya grants him 3 wishes. Meanwhile, the prophetess Ursula had gone to the princess, and Ursula believed the situation was quite serious if the princess of the largest magical kingdom needed her help. The princess was worried and explains to the prophetess Ursula that the country was protected only by a purification spell, and they should act before the magic was undone. Ursula asks if she wanted to know what to do next, and the princess says yes. It didn't matter if it was just a chance to save that kingdom. And at that moment, suddenly, everyone was wearing collars, and the princess orders everyone to go to the treasure room and seize the invaders. And the prophetess Ursula says that was a decapitation collar. He was used to decapitate sacrifices offered to a certain jinn in exchange for granting a wish. The princess recounts that once, the king of Clyrode wished for the death of Lord Demon. In return, half of the living beings on the continent were asked for. After that, at the cost of many lives, the mages of the kingdom had joined forces and combined their powers to seal that jinn. And it seems that someone managed to set her free and asked her to grant wishes. The remaining time was until the moment the jinn fulfilled the wish. So, the princess asks Ursula to try to see what she should do to overcome this crisis. Old Lady Ursula grabs various cards and levitates, telling the princess to look for the true great hero. He had already been summoned, and then one of the servants says that perhaps it was that adventurer whom her king was trying to recruit before. Ursula says he was in the west, but the princess couldn't send soldiers to scour the cities in the west because she couldn't split the forces protecting the area. The princess resolves to go personally. Meanwhile, in a guild, Banaza is showing off his product, and the man sees it's a shield made with dragon scales. The man decides to buy it and asks him to always bring equipment like that, and Banaza asks if he knew anyone else interested in items made with magical beast leather. He explains that he had recently moved there and was looking for places to supply products and would be very grateful if he knew trustworthy colleagues to recommend. The man says he'd prefer to buy everything, but it's no problem. He'll introduce him to some acquaintances. Balirosa and Fenris Fenris watch from afar all of Banaza's negotiation. Ballyrosa envies Fenris for marrying Banaza because he's talented at everything. Besides making the shield with dragon scales, he negotiates and even secures a sales route. Fenris says Ballyrosa already had a very competent man available, which was Lord Demon. Then Banaza comes out and tells Fenris that he sold the shield for a higher price than he expected, thanking Ballyrosa for introducing him to such a good store. Ballyrosa says she's happy to have been helpful, and then Banaza says it's time to go. Banaza explains that he used to be a merchant, so he thought he was good at this kind of work. Fenris is happy to see Banaza evolving in his work, but at the same time, she's a little sad to spend less time with him, so they agree to go hunting together sometimes. Suddenly, the panel pops up, giving an alert that a djinn is approaching. Haya approaches, asking if he usually goes by Banaza. After all, the great hero's wish was for him to die, and just as she's about to attack, Fenris steps forward to defend Banaza, ending up taking a blow that leaves her severely injured. Banaza tries to heal her, but the wound is too grave, surpassing the level of magic he has, and he doesn't have magic to substitute healing magic. At that moment, the djinn unleashes another attack on Banaza, but he comes out unscathed, defending himself but also Fenris and Ballyrosa. Finally, Banaza has a formidable rival, and he declares that Haya will pay.